Hi, and welcome back to another episode of All the Cards on the Table. This week, we have obviously, through the series, been moving through the relationship stages. And this week, we're going to be looking at that 7-year itch. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Hello, everyone. You're listening to All Cards on the Table podcast with Claire and Sylvia, a show that talks about how men and women aren't so different from each other. We just don't speak the same language. We will dissect every topic and put an end to miscommunication. So, get ready to get uncomfortable. Hi, and welcome back. Claire Attio here.
Hi, everyone. This is Sylvia Jaira.
And this week we're going to be talking about that 7-year itch. And we say 7 years, that was the old phrase, but it could be any time in the relationship. It's any time that investment in each other kind of dwindles and the relationship gets stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to kind of unpack that, because a lot of people feel that there's a bit of a culture at the moment. It's like stagnant out. We've got this consumer mentality, and unfortunately, it's being applied to relationships, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's people. I think it's more of the people are thinking that it's love and it was gonna be like that honeymoon phase, and then they realize, oh, this is getting real. Like I'm really in this relationship, and they haven't even thought about everything else. They were just so involved in the moment and how they felt that they didn't really. I don't think they thought everything through as far as like this is a long-term commitment or a forever commitment in some cases. And then they start getting, I would say, antsy that nothing is growing. They're just stagnant. It's dull. It's the 9 to 5 feeling every day, almost like Groundhog Day every day. And I think when we get there, we start noticing all the little things that bother us now that before they didn't. But that's because we've been with them and now we're noticing it even more. Like, oh, he leaves his shoes everywhere, or she takes out her clothes everywhere and it doesn't clean up, or things like that before we've never even thought about. But I think it's that point where we go from the honeymoon stage to the this is real stage. This is how this is really happening.
Yeah. Well, I think it's I know from the motivational coaching that I do, one of the phrases that I always use is that if there's no movement and there's no growth, then that stagnation starts to eat away at the happiness. And when you start to lose the happiness, that's when you start looking outside of yourself for somebody. And people start off their relationships outside of themselves. Let's not forget that. But even if you've not started in that space, even if you have, you've gone into the relationship being very confident, very happy, very grounded and stable and balanced, if you don't continue to invest in yourself and in the relationship, that you're not going to get that growth. And if there is no growth, there is no momentum. And if there is no momentum, then that will eat away at the happiness. And I think it was interesting. I was watching a video just a couple of days ago. Actually, it's interesting that we're having this podcast today, and it was a guy that was saying how the day-to-day responsibilities of bills and expectations just kept putting on another layer and another layer and another layer and another layer and another layer until they don't even want they don't even want to get out of bed. They don't even know why they are here, apart from being just being available to other people, just doing
Mm-hmm.
everything for other people. They lose themselves. And I think I really kind of I was very interested in that, because if anybody's following the podcast, if they've watched all our podcasts, we've said time and time again, there is not enough platforms for men to express their mental health, their mental
Mm-hmm.
well-being, their emotional well-being. There's not, and we do have these ideas that men are there to support the women, men are there to, we keep having these conversations. It's lots and lots of things coming out in media that men should be doing this and they should be doing that, and nobody actually says what do they want to do. And I think that can very much happen in a relationship as well, especially when you get into, if you get into that higher level commitment and you start to have a family. It's that
Mm-hmm.
all those expectations on them.
Mm-hmm.
And as women, and if we're the main caregivers, which is what is usual, it's still happening. It's not 100%, but it's still happening. Is And because we as women have been brought up to think and believe that we can have everything, we can have the career and we can have the family and we can have the husband and we can have everything, but none of us are supermen or superwomen.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the line, we're all hanging on for dear life and forgetting to check on the other one.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. We have absolutely turned into men are only valued for what they can bring into a relationship or of any kind. I mean, even in a work field that with friends. And we've never actually stopped and asked how they actually feel. And I'm guilty of that. I just see, including my father, that we've never bothered to even ask him what he wants, what he likes, what are his hobbies or anything like that. And I think I spoke about it in other podcasts as well, which have made me more aware, and we're more aware of it now. We ask how they're doing. I have brothers, so obviously also with them, I talk to them like, how are you feeling? You're just constantly reminding them, I love you, you're amazing. Uh, you bring more than monetary value to our relationship, as well as to our husbands and boyfriends and partners, that we say, hey, if we could just once in a while go like, hey, I really appreciate everything that you're doing. You should take a day off to do something you like.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would start the healing for a lot of them, because for once they will put themselves first and not be judged. And it goes to show how much that they wanted, because it was so funny that I went to this sporting goods store that my dad loves, my husband loves as well. And as you enter, it says like, welcome to, forgot what it said. It says, welcome to the fish and hunting gear and all other liars as well. And I found that really funny, because it was like, you're lying to go do something that you like. And let's stop and think about that. You have to lie to your partner that you're gonna go fishing or hunting or go out with the boys. It's funny to think about it, but it shouldn't be like that. Because
Mm-hmm.
imagine if we went to a salon to get our hair done, or a spa, and it's like, hey, welcome all you ladies, and have a day at the spa, and everyone who's lying to your spouse that you're here as well. We were like, I would never. I tell my husband everything. He checks out. You get the point. But
But that is a classic example, because having our hair done, for most women, that is a given. That
mm-hmm,
isn't a luxury. That is an essential part of our personal care and hygiene.
mm-hmm, exactly.
But most women enjoy it. It's like, oh, I'm going to get 2 hours to myself without any kids, without any interruptions, and I can have a girly chat.
Yeah.
It's that. And yeah, we very often don't permit that for the male counterpart.
Mm-hmm. And I thought about that, because I remember, I don't think I've ever had my husband go, oh my goodness, you spend this much on your hair, and we know that it can be expensive. We know that. But the same amount, if they would go and spend it on fishing gear or boat gear or auto parts or whatever their hobbies are, we would flip. Most of us would. And oh, we had to buy this, and we could automatically start saying, but you spend so much on that because we had to fix the something in the house, and how can you spend that? But because we're seeing it, I think that I'm spending on my hair and myself. We kind of turn it around and say, it's
Essential.
for you so that I look pretty for you. Right. And so, I mean, I'm guilty of doing that. It's like, of course, I mean, I'm doing it for you. Um, but he can turn around and goes like, I'm fixing my fishing gear for you.
Mhm.
He's like, well, I don't want fish. I don't want you to
Unless he
do
does
that.
the whole caveman thing and brings fish home for you to cook.
Yeah, exactly. Just fish. And then I'll be like, okay, yeah, we're camping. We're going to eat whatever you catch. You better bring some fish. But it was so interesting to me. And I just started to laugh. And I was just like, why do they have to lie? Like, why can't you just tell us?
Because we're
But
not giving them space. And I think this is a problem
exactly.
coming back to the 7-year itch. If you're not giving somebody space for a long period of time, they are going to go somewhere. And this is on both sides. If
Yeah,
you're not
yeah.
holding space, if you're not holding space for each other, then if somebody comes along that holds that space, you are, whether you go there or not is a different matter, but you are going to be
Yeah,
attracted to it.
yeah. Eh, And I think also when we come to that point in our relationship where we start looking elsewhere, and most can say that it's because they're not paying attention to me. And it's usually the man, unfortunately, that say they're not paying attention to me. And it's because the women are with the babies and taking care of the house and the cleaning and this and that. And I always go, well, why don't you participate helping out?
Mm.
Maybe if you
Oh,
guys can share things, well, I work. And I'm like, so does she.
yeah.
I mean, if the thing is, that's what we need to talk about when we date. It's like, how do you feel? How about sharing responsibilities once we have children? What's your idea of parenting? And really see if to me, I'm gonna say what attracted me the most about my husband was the fact that the Swedish culture are very equal. So I knew that I was going to have a partner. And everyone always used to ask me, why can't you marry like a Latino or Hispanic guy? And I was like, ah, my gosh, because I know the work that goes into, not saying
Mm-hmm.
anything. I dated many, but it was
Mm-hmm.
for me, that was like, I want an equal partnership. And nowadays, there's more and more, it's changing. I'm not saying they're all like that. I'm not generalizing everyone at all, but for the most part, that's how they're grown, like
Mm-hmm.
the
It's
mommy
culture differences, isn't
takes
it?
care of them, does everything for them. My mother did everything for my brothers, and they expect in return, actually. They still want a traditional marriage woman,
Mm-hmm.
a traditional marriage. They still want that.
Mm-hmm.
And, but when we have that traditional marriage, then we can easily fall into that category of the stagnant, not growing because one partner stays at home and the other one goes to work. And that's when they start to feel like they're only valued by what he brings, how much money he brings and provides.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's taking care of the household so she's feeling used and abused, neglected, he's feeling left out and not being appreciated no matter how much he works. And I wonder, is there a way that we can still have that and not feel the fact that we're selling ourselves short? Like, as a stay-at-home mom, how can I make my husband help out more and appreciate him? Because if he stays at home with me, and he's not going to make the money
Mm-hmm.
to pay for the stuff that we want. So I have to understand that if I want this type of lifestyle, he's going to have to go away and work. And if he's going to be working all day and dealing with people all day, and then I come home and like, here are your kids, I'm done.
I think
You
that's the
know?
difference, isn't it? I remember, I mean, my childhood wasn't perfect. I mean, our family, you know, was has it had its fair share of dysfunction, let's put it that way. But I know my parents were they did the traditional relationship as we were growing up. And I do remember because I mean, Dad he used to have two jobs. So he would finish one job and he'd go on to another one just to make us a really good life. Um, he would always have a meal. There would always be a meal ready for him when he came home, and we would sit as a family.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I know that sounds really old fashioned and really unimportant, but actually that made him feel valued because nobody ate until Dad was home.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself was like, oh, they do value me.
Mm-hmm.
They do value my company, they value my input, they value what I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very simple, very small, very old fashioned. I know, you know, there might be some comments there, but that was the first thing. The second thing was is we would then go and play or do whatever we did and go through the usual kind of get ready for bed routine with bath time, blah 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 blah. But it was always Dad that as we were going up the stairs as children, we would have to hide and he would play fee fi
Mm-hmm.
fo fum. And so he would have to find each of us individually. He would put us into our beds.
Mm-hmm. That's
And that it meant that he had family time, albeit it was minutes. I mean, it was what quarter of an hour, half an hour maximum.
mm-hmm.
Um, but it meant that he was involved. It meant that when we sat down to the table in the evening and we there was conversation, there was no TV on, there was conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and also he got to have that family time, that family input. And it's for all the things my mother did because she was always there. I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
So it does have a massive importance.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's really hard on mums when she's there slaving away sometimes because if you've got more than one child,
Yeah.
it's not easy. Um,
Yeah.
and it is exhausting. And especially nowadays, because there's so many different activities that kids go and do. So you're going
You're a
here, there.
taxi. Yeah.
I mean, the calendar is just chocker, and your mind is just like, ooh. Um, so I know for mums, if it's a stay-at-home mum situation, that's going to be really tough that Dad gets all the glory at the end of the night for just 10 minutes of his time when she spent 10 hours. And I think
Yeah.
this is where we need to realize, but it's as humans, if we feel safe, loved, nurtured, that becomes an expectation, that becomes a normal paradigm. And so all the hard work that is put into doing that
Mm-hmm.
isn't recognized by the children, but it is recognized as adults. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's where mums need to just kind of go, you know what? Okay, I said I'm going to do this. I'm not going to get any gold badge or a gold star or anybody. I might get
Yeah.
something on Mother's Day.
Yeah. Yeah. Without expectations.
And
Exactly. Doing
it's
things.
learning to be okay with that, learning to know that
Yeah.
your role is to bring up a really balanced human being that is going to be able to pass that on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. It's not about the glorification and the validation of what you're doing.
Exactly.
That should come at night. That should come in the bedroom when you're cuddled up. That is, you know, that should be another role of the partner. A big
Mm-hmm.
hug. Thank you for everything you've done with the kids today.
Mm-hmm. And as well as thank you for going to work and putting up with everyone
Exactly. Yes.
and being away from us as well, because
Hmm.
that's exactly that we have to be equals. And I think it's the partnership we keep forgetting. It's a partnership. When you're married, it's a partnership that you're marrying into. And if you don't go knowing your role in that partnership clearly, you're going to suffer, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
And for me, at the beginning, I wanted to, like you said, I wanted to have it all. I wanted to have the career. I wanted to have the marriage. I wanted to have the family. I wanted to have the lifestyle. I wanted to have everything. And I was burned out at the end
Hmm.
because it was so much work. I couldn't do it all. So then I was like, okay, well, maybe if I get a personal assistant and if I get a nanny. So even with a nanny and a personal assistant, then I felt guilty because I've left my kids with somebody else and somebody else is raising my children. So maybe I'll just quit. But then I'm like, no, but I value as well as a woman. I want my career. So it's this inner struggle that we go through. And for men, it's always been so simple. We think, and it's not the case. Let's remind ourselves that that's not the case. A man just doesn't say it.
Hmm.
He hasn't verbally said it. Uh, but they do suffer. They don't know their children, and that hurts them. And they suffer in silence because remember, we've taught them not to say anything like that. If we say, "Oh, I miss the children and I want to spend more time with them," they're gonna be like, "Well, what are you, the mom or something?" They immediately get attacked, even by other males.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they've learned to just stay quiet. If they're sensitive, emotional, they're sissies. So they stayed okay. They take their roles, and I think most men be like most men, not all of them, most men take their roles very at heart of being the providers, and learn to take the punches.
Hmm.
They learn to deal with it in
But there's only
silence.
so, if you think of a punch bag, there's only so many punches you can take before the stuffing starts to fall out. And this
Yeah,
is this is this is this is where that 7 year itch comes in. It's not 7 years. I mean, that's just a phrase, but that is where that comes in because we all have a self-preservation trigger
yeah,
within us.
yeah. And it's true. I mean, for me, you start to realize that I matter as both. Where am I in this relationship? I'm not growing. No, my husband's not paying attention to me. He's always working. My wife's not paying attention to me. She's so involved with the children. I'm invincible. And we start losing sight of who we are, of who we were as a couple. And we start going almost our own different paths that we start to forget
Mhm.
why we're even together in the beginning. And that's when you start seeing marriages have problems because we no longer look at each other as the person we fell in love with, the person we cared for, the person we respect. We start looking at the person that is here living with me,
The
not doing
enemy.
anything. You're not helping, and we're just focusing on all the bad things that they're doing. But
Mhm.
for one time when I felt like that, I had to turn around myself and walked in his shoes
Mhm.
and see what it felt like and understood from his point of view that it's not the case. And I said, oh my God, if I did or said half the things I tell him, if he said that to me, I would be heartbroken. You can't
Mhm.
help. Oh my God, don't do this. Don't pick up, like that. We start acting like because we're in our role of motherhood, it's so embedded in us that we start treating our spouse as another child. And
Yeah.
most of us say that, oh, I have X amount of kids, and you include your husband and you think
Mhm.
that's a joke. And no, that should never be a joke because if you find yourself like mothering that
Mhm.
your husband, tell him what to do this, do that, he's not gonna look at you as his partner, someone he fantasizes with. He's gonna start looking at you as his mother, and he's
Mhm.
going to start to retaliate and start staying away from you because that's kind of the relationship that most
Yeah.
mother sons have.
And it's fair to say because some women listening to this will be going, well, he I've been in a relationship where I was treated like the mother all the time, even though I was saying I am not your mother. Don't put that on me. You've got to step up to the mark here. Um, So there are, there's
Yeah.
there's good and bad. You've got to, but what we're actually saying is if he was there for you as a man, not a boy,
Yeah.
when you got together and you're hitting problems, don't, because I think there's so much information out there, like it's called the 7 year itch. So it's almost like an expectation. Oh, well, it all goes downhill. And
Mm,
no, it doesn't. If you keep
no.
those lines of communication open, if you both encourage each other to go, okay, am I still happy?
Mm,
And really be honest about that. Right. Yeah, I am happy, but this isn't, and it gives you it gives you the maneuverment to actually pull out the dead weeds and sow the healthy seeds, and so that you can both kind of really cultivate and grow and continue
mm,
growing, and you'll do that together. But if you start that separation, oh, he thinks this, oh, she thinks that, you're going to start going in different directions, and those weeds are going to collect in the middle, and you're not going to be able to find your way back to each other.
no. I've always wondered, like, we always do at businesses and every management reevaluations on how things are going, but we never do it with relationships.
Of
We
course,
never
the most
reevaluate,
important time.
and that's we should be doing that constantly because that's our biggest part of our lives, of who we are, and we never do it. I actually started doing that with my husband, and we started to reevaluate our relationship. And I said, sometimes it's hard because I understand you might not like the answers, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, how are you going to
Yeah.
fix something unless you know? And I said, how are you feeling? How do you feel about our relationship? Where are we at? Where are you at? How
And I
does
I
that
think
feel?
you've really hit it on the head there, because people are scared to ask
Hmm.
those questions. They're scared of what answers they'll get.
Hmm. And
But the
it's very
problem is,
scary.
yeah, it will. The thing is, if you don't ask those questions, it will fall apart anyway. If
Yeah,
the, if that communication's gone, it will fall apart. Whether it does it this year or whether it does 10 years down the road.
yeah,
You would have had 10 years of really poor communication and not being happy. And I think this is the key. Are we happy? Am I happy? Is he happy? Are we happy?
yeah. Well, that's like I said, I started that with my husband, and I was surprised. I mean, I was hurt and I was surprised and I felt bad as well because that's how I learned that he felt like he was just being valued for what he brought in, and that hurt me. And so, and one thing that came up as well was that I used to see it as he's just staying away from me. He wants nothing to do with me. And he's like, no, I just see you sometimes you have so much going on and you have all these things happening when you had the business and with work and you're running all these things. So I just stayed away. I didn't want to be another burden. And I'm like, no, at that moment, I just needed you to come and hug me and tell me everything's going to be okay. But we weren't communicating. So I, this is where the 25, 75% rule goes
Mm-hmm.
in, where I started making my own ideas and beliefs of what was happening. He has his own. And when I finally sat down and put my big girl pants on, I was like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation and I'm going to be okay with whatever outcome because I know that if I don't have this, I'm going to have it regardless later on,
Mm-hmm.
probably in front of a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to get there. So I'd rather know now to see where we are at and grab this bull by the horns and just really face it. Uh, we sat down and we talked and it was really wide opening because it wasn't what I expected. And it helped us and it helped him. And it made me see him through different eyes, more of compassion and understanding to the point where I kind of said something like, hey, man, you need to go out and do something with your friend. Go out and find yourself. Go out and do something. And he did. He went and had a great time and he came back very relaxed and everything. And things have changed since that. but he always felt that he didn't. He said, I feel like I don't deserve it. I feel like, I'm working all the time and then you're home with the kids all the time. So when I'm here, I'm trying to help as much. So the times that I am free, I try to spend it with the kids.
Mhm.
And I think that's a lot for the dads. That's so true that if they feel, and this is where that phrase goes for other liars too, that
Mhm.
they feel like they don't, that they hear it so much from their spouses, their wives. You don't help me at home. All the
And
time you're
media,
working.
and media.
Yeah, and the media as well. And then
Mm.
I want to take a day. You want to take a day off when you have your only day off. You want to go do something with your buddies, and they feel like they don't deserve it. They feel
Mm.
like they don't have that right to do that. So what do? They lie, and then that becomes a problem. That becomes another something else they're hiding. That they're not being themselves. They're not being open. They're not being heard. They feel like they have to do this, and if it's not fishing, which is or going out to cars or boats or whatever it is that they're fancy, golfing, which is a big one, golf. Um, then they're out there meeting other women. And unfortunately, that's also the case. And they're gonna try to escape to
Mhm.
find themselves one way or another. And the best case is to back off and let them be. They're going to be more appreciative of you, I believe, if you open that door for them to go and back off, because that way they feel like they don't have to hide it. They don't feel like you're mothering them, and they can still feel themselves with you.
Mhm.
They become their name. They're not honey, dad, you know, or whatever.
Yeah,
They
they're not a
become
label, they're a
their first,
person.
yeah, they become
Yeah.
themselves as well as you do, and we do it all the time. I mean, I think I see more girls' night out than there are men night outs out there. I see girls' book clubs, women's book clubs more out there just to get together so we can chit chat than there are men.
Mhm.
Now we might have our little book clubs and a little women's hangout, but men they call a poker night. But how many actually have that? And I don't hear that often.
Well,
And
it's interesting. I think you hit it on the head, bringing this to a close when you said that they don't feel that they can have this space because women have been taught that we're supposed to be everything. We can have the career. We can men have also the social media is okay. You're a father. You have to be doing this. You have to provide this. And the list goes. And there, nobody says do what makes you happy.
no, because it's
No,
seen as selfish.
but it's
And
if you work together, if you know as a person what makes you happy, and then your husband is able to express what makes him happy, and you have the conversation about what's going to make your family happy. I mean,
mhm.
that is an amazing recipe for longevity, if ever there was one.
And you know what? It works because, like, I can honestly tell you from experience, it works. Once I backed off and let him be who he is and stop being his mother of telling him what to do. I mean, of course, if he's doing something that is inappropriate in front of the children, I will always like, hey, the kids are looking,
And vice
you know.
versa.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Although, women are more, just kidding. Where, I mean, more aware of what we do in front of our children, I would say, than men are. But no, it's just backing off to let them breathe. And just because uh, to me, that's what was what 180 for us in our relationship. It was me backing off and not being on his throat all the time and not being telling him, I guess, what to do. And I felt like, oh, he helps out at the house. He does his share of things, and I work. He works. We both are aware of that. We're both contributing the same amount now, and there are times like, hey, I'm gonna go with my buddy or whatever. Okay, fine, have fun. And that relationship, that communication, as long as that communication is clear, and sometimes you might need a third person in there so to translate, because what you're saying, he's not hearing it. What he's saying, you're not hearing it, and vice versa, or she's not hearing it.
Yeah.
You're going to need that third person. So going to therapy, even though there's no problems in your marriage, it's actually very healthy. It's looked at as a preventative way to not ending up in divorce or separation if you're not married. Um, so I always think like, okay, we're going to have now therapy and have someone that can translate for us because we're not hearing. We are talking to prove our point. We're not having this conversation to listen. And we need to have that person to remind us you're not listening what he's saying, or you're not listening to what she's saying, or and I think it's one of those things that you really need to look into before when you hit that mark is the 7 year age, like you said, even though it could be 3 years, 2 years, whatever it is for everyone, 15 for some, when you feel like you're not growing and it's starting to be repetitive and you're starting to really think about it, like, this is not where I thought my life was going to be. This is the time to start opening up that conversation and that, just grab that bull by the horns and have that conversation. And if you need a third person in there to make your point across, I think that would be a great start.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a really good place to leave that. That wraps that up lovely. Yeah. It's if you're feeling stagnant, you've not got that growth, if you're bored, then that is when you have the conversation. Not when there's problems, but when you start to have those feelings. Nip it in the bud.
Before you get to him.
And so that is bye-bye from me.
And me. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Till next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so and please leave a review, as it helps us grow and bridge the gap between the sexes. If you have any topics you would like us to cover, shoot us an email. Until next time, go out and practice putting all your cards on the table with no judgment, expectations, and fear.